still in Marshall County, right?
It's in,
They
that's
haven't
right.
moved it.
No, Brindley Mountain.
Yeah.
They've tried to change the name, but they haven't moved it.
All right. How did the pronunciation of Arab rather than the obvious Arab?
Well, in my case, it was about an 8-year trip. I left Arab after graduating from Arab High School in '68 and went to undergraduate work in Nashville and inched my way north. After undergraduate work at David Lipscomb in Nashville, went to Ohio State in Columbus, Ohio, on purpose, by design. I wanted to get out of the South for a while because I knew I wanted to come back here. And I went to graduate school, worked about 4 years in Ohio in public relations, and saw a way to get back south, and that was Jimmy Carter was running for president, and they were looking for an Ohio press secretary. My father, who really has been one of those people who never sent me out of the room when he started talking about politics, called and said, I think you ought to look at this Jimmy Carter fella, and I'll set you up an interview with Jody Powell. And through some friends of his, I got to talk to Jody and was hired for Ohio. And after the primary, made it back down to Atlanta working on the general campaign in the press office, and from there to the transition team in Washington, and from there to the White House press staff.
When you were getting that appointment to talk with Jody Powell about the job, which eventually led to your trip to Washington,
Right.
It was almost a disaster when you got on the press bus.
That's right. I had flown to La Crosse, Wisconsin to meet Jody. And I was told to go get on the press bus, and as soon as we got to the first site, Jody would talk to me. And nobody told me to leave the seats, that the unwritten rule of the press, and that is that all of the TV crews get the first 3 seats in the bus. So I plopped myself down in the second seat, and this bald-headed man, kindly-looking gentleman came in and sat down next to me and started talking to me, and was so nice. And said, you know, what are you doing here? And I explained I was there to interview with Jody. And he asked me where I was from because he said, I know that's an Alabama drawl. And I thought, oh, great. You know, I'd been out of Alabama for about 8 years, but people could still recognize the drawl. And it was Clarence Gibbons from Prattville, who is based out of Atlanta now, I think, but still lives in Prattville. And I found out later that Clarence and all of the techs with the technicians with the networks would throw people out of those seats.
Yes.
And I don't know whether I just looked like an Alabama girl, or as soon as I opened my mouth, he knew that he was not going to throw me out of my seat. He was going to let me sit there next to him and be nice to me.
Well, that's terrific. And, of course, that led to the interview then later on.
Right. In fact, he's one of the people who directed me where I should go to finally get in to see the eminent Mr. Powell.
Well, marvelous. Exactly what do you do, Linda?
Jody and the president feel very strongly that the press outside Washington are just as, if not more important, than the White House correspondents who cover the president every day in person. And so when I moved up to Washington with the transition team, Jody charged Walt Werfel, who's now deputy press secretary, and me with putting together a makeup for the White House press office that would include a section that would be well-staffed and could deal with the press outside Washington, just as large as the staff that deals with the White House correspondents. I'm on that staff. I'm one of the people who answers questions from the press outside Washington, serves as a spokesperson for the White House press office and for the president. And also, one of the best things I think we've done is begin to bring press from outside Washington in regularly to Washington to meet with the president. Every 2 weeks he sits down with editors and news directors and anchormen from cities like Montgomery and Birmingham and Des Moines and Sacramento, and takes their questions just as he does on other weeks from White House correspondents.
How successful has this been?
Well, I think you have to look at from 2 perspectives. From the president's perspective, we believe what he tells us when he says that he finds the questions that the press from outside Washington ask him much more valuable to him in keeping his finger on the pulse of what the people outside the Beltway, outside Washington, are thinking. And from the standpoint of the press, we have found that with this program and with other programs that we're doing, we regularly send out background information on major initiatives so that people have our facts, that if we can believe the feedback they're giving us, they feel that they are better taken care of than they ever have been. And they recognize it as something more than stroking, and we were very cautious of that. We did not want to appear to be a PR organization that was doing nothing more but bringing in editors and giving them a little bit, but primarily letting them sit down with the president. We wanted it to be a working day, and it's a whole day. Well, it's not just 30 minutes with the president. It's with members of the cabinet, it's with members of the White House staff, and every session has Q&A that we feel benefits not only the briefer, but
Questions
also
and
the,
answers.
right. I'm sorry, questions
Yes.
and answers that we feel benefit not only the briefers, but also the other people in the room. They tell us they like what we're doing, and they don't always agree with us, and that's fine with me. I would begin to be a little bit worried if every editor who came in went back singing our praises as far as our policies were concerned. But he does go back saying, this is what they say they're trying to do. Here's my opinion of it. And our theory is if he's going to hit us around the head, we would rather even do it with our own facts than with something he gets from a wire story that's only a paragraph or two long.
You know, the White House staff, especially the Jody Powells and the Hamilton Jordans, have been in for a lot of perhaps some unjustified criticisms.
I agree with the unjustified part. I think that all of us learned very quickly after we got up there that whether you were at a senior staff level or a lower level, that you could no longer act as if you had a private life. You were living in a fishbowl. Whether we liked it or not, there were always people, always members of the press. I've been to parties where you thought, I can't believe they invited members of the press here, but they didn't invite them, they just showed up. There are always people looking to see if you're going to do something that might embarrass the president or that will be less than what they think a presidential aide should be doing, or just something that they can write about in a gossip column. Washington thrives on its gossip columns. I know people on Senate staffs as well as some elected officials who turn immediately to the ear column in the Washington Star before they read anything else to make sure their name's not in it that day. So that I think that some of the things that have happened to Hamilton in particular are exaggerations. I know the people who were with him on some of the instances, and as I've said to you, I believe very strongly that the reports that were in the press were inaccurate. But nevertheless, you know, you just have to put yourself in situations where those things don't happen.
The reception in Washington for a Southern president was perhaps not what it should have been.
One reason that a lot of the Southerners who are on the staff joined Jimmy Carter, even though we were to the four winds across the United States when we started working on his campaign, was because we had been out of the South and had experienced what was a very definite bigotry towards Southerners. Here was a very bright individual who was, I thought at the time and still believe, really upgrading the opinion of Southerners in the minds of Americans. And we came to Washington, and because we had campaigned against Washington, I mean, as an outsider, there were a lot of the wise old souls in town who decided they were going to show the young whippersnapper, who also happened to be Southern. And I think a lot of these more sophisticated gossip columnists and reporters in town really were looking for things to make it look as if there were a bunch of yahoos running the government. And I think they've been proven wrong. In fact, they have since written that they have. Jody Powell was, when he was criticized for not going to enough parties given by the right people, said, listen, if it will help us get our programs through Congress, I will be glad to go to any party you tell me to go to. But we spend a lot of time around here working, I guess like a lot of people who are raised in the South. You know, the president tells you to do something, tells his staff to do something, and you spend a lot of time trying to get it done, spend less time partying. But the idea that some Southerners have finally gained some respect, I think, for the South. Even if you disagree with him, you have to believe in a couple of things: that Jimmy Carter is a good man and a competent, bright man, and admits that he doesn't have all the answers. In the South, people grasp more quickly what a good man is, and I think that's probably one of the best things about having a Southerner in the White House.
No matter how urgent it might be, theoretically we could do it. We did. By accident, I was looking for a job in my hometown paper in Missouri. I needed a copy boy. That was in 1931, and I applied for the job and got it. And since I was working there, I decided I probably ought to learn as much about the business as I could, so I started trying to learn one step after another, and that's the way it worked out.
What was it like in the days when you started with them, as far as the way you got the news processed and out over the wires?
Well, looking back now, it looks pretty antiquated. Of course, it was modern. At the time, we used old-type printers that received the news, and we transmitted on a transmitter through tape. The transmitter would perforate the tape, and then the wire would pick that up. There's a series of symbols. And each symbol represented a certain number or letter, and transmitting over the wire, the machines would pick that up. Now, everything goes into a computer. We don't use a typewriter anymore, except to write letters. We punch our news directly on a machine in the background there called a CRT. It's just like a TV screen, and we can edit it, and when it's edited, we push a button that puts it into a computer in Atlanta and automatically transmits it on whichever circuits we designate. We have a code symbol that designates a circuit.
What sort of changes have you seen between the way state news is covered now and the way it was covered when you started?
Oh, it's the big change is in the volume of coverage. We have a lot more volume of state news now than we had, probably 10 times as much.
This is back in the 40s?
Back in the 40s, we had, because of our limited facilities, and it's just, we just hadn't grown up as much then as we have now. A lot of our member papers had printers they could punch in on the wire, and they did that. And they punched it on a direct keyboard, and that was awfully slow.
Of course, you are one of many Associated Press staff members in the state, but what other ways do you gather news? You get contributions from your affiliates?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we get, of course, in Montgomery, we have 3 newsmen here, and we cover the Capitol, particularly the legislature, full time. We also get news that's given to us by the 2 newspapers in Montgomery, Advertiser Journal. A great deal of news from them. From other newspapers, we get an increasing amount each year, it seems, from broadcast members, radio and television stations that call us with news. Some of them call us every day with one thing or another.
Talking about all this new equipment, notice you have a rather old-fashioned telephone over there. Any reason why you keep that around?
Primarily, I guess it's just to prove that I can. It was here when I came here, and it was real handy. I had a headset put on there, and it's handy. I can I can talk over that phone with the headset on. I've got both hands free to write, do whatever I need to do. I've been kidded about it so much, and it's become a challenge to hold on to it.
What are the plans for Rex Thomas when he retires?
Dennis, I figure that there are probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 million big-mouth bass that I haven't caught. And I intend to spend most of my time going back one at a time trying to get them and trying again to get them. And I'm going to work on that real hard.
Therapist and educator, would you please welcome with us Dr. Eleanor Hamilton?
Reverend Freeney, you've just returned from a trip to New York to appear on NBC's America Live program, and you were obviously limited to the amount of time that you had, and we have invited you to be on Alabama Illustrated to perhaps pick up where you left off with the NBC program in your response to sex therapist Dr. Eleanor Hamilton. What would you like to say as far as picking up where you left off?
Well, first of all, Bob, let me say that I appreciate WSFA and you having me on Alabama Illustrated today, and to continue the thought that I wanted to give up there on the America Alive program. First of all, let me say the language that Dr. Eleanor Hamilton used, and I think that everybody is familiar with, was very offensive to many people. I received, I guess, over 200 phone calls since I've returned to Alabama, and many, many letters expressing this and the time that they gave me up there. But all of this was, as I said, was very offensive to people, and they didn't like it. Now, some of the statistics that I wanted to present up there, which I wasn't given time to, was 21% of all of the children are one-parent children. Now, this means that 1 out of every 5 children the parents are either working, they're not on welfare, but they're out trying to make a living and so forth, and the child is there to watch the television. They're not supervised in what they watch and so forth. And this is a thing that concerns me. And then another statistic that was given on the program, on the Today's program, the morning that I was there, November the 13th, that one of the staff doctors said there's over 11 million teenagers that are sexually active today, and this year over 1 million of them, of the girls, will become pregnant. And so this, I believe, is a concern to many, many people. I think that many people misunderstood why I was there. They thought I was there against everything that Dr. Hamilton had to say. Now, I am not against sex education. I think that it is very much needed today. I think it is needed in the home. This is something that the mother and the father should take care of. In doctor's offices, and at one time on the program I said in schools, but I am not for public sex education, where it's paid for in colleges and so forth. Then I think that our young people need to be educated in this line, but I think they need to be educated in the right way.
Why do you object to public sex education?
Well, this is forcing someone's view on me or my child. Now, if the parents agree on it, then and the person that's teaching it, then that would be between those parents and the teacher. I don't think it should be forced on you or myself or my child or your child or anyone's child in that sense of the word.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said that the statistics perhaps were confusing to the viewers, comparing the statistics that she was giving out, Dr. Hamilton, and those that you were going to present to the audience in New York.
Well, the surveys, now I don't know where she got her information. I don't know whether it was surveys, statistics, or what. But she was talking about the young people. Now, I feel after going to New York and being on the program and meeting Dr. Eleanor Hamilton before the program, I feel like, and this is my own personal observation, that Dr. Hamilton is well, I'll get it out in just a minute, that Dr. Hamilton is a product of her own imagination. Now, the reason I say that, because in her mind, she wants to talk about this, and she does talk about it all the time. But she has no basis, she has no foundation for her thoughts, other than what she feels and what she thinks in her own mind. And we call her an expert. I could be an expert, or you could be an expert. Anyone could be an expert if you come up with some far-out ideas that some people like to hear. And, of course, some people don't like to hear it.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as the solution to this problem from your point of view?
Well, I think that our forefathers came to this country for religious freedom. And as I pointed out on the program, that I have a textbook that if people will go by and they'll follow, they'll read it, and they'll abide by it, they won't have to worry about pregnancy, they won't have to worry about VD, they won't have to worry about these things. Now, the solution, I believe, is returning to the old paths, or returning to the very foundation in which this country was founded. And if we'll do that as people today, and follow the foundation that God has laid down for us in His Word, then we won't have to worry about all this openness. You see, our forefathers, they didn't have this problem. They didn't have the openness that we have today. And when people say, well, openness is good, and we should be open with our children. Now, my wife and I, we had 2 daughters and 1 son. She took care of the daughters, I took care of the son. Why would I, as a father, want to be that open with my daughter when my wife is there to handle the situation?
Perhaps that's not the case in all situations, though.
No, that isn't. There was one man and his daughter on the program that day, I believe, and he was both mother and father, or trying to be both mother and father. I don't think they can do that, but a father cannot be the mother to a daughter.
I'd like to touch on the reaction that you've gotten so far. We've talked about what you wanted to say and gotten your message across here tonight. What kind of reaction have you had, and has it been from across the country, and has it been positive or negative?
Well, I would say 99% of the reaction has been positive. I have a phone call as far away as New Mexico. I had one from Tennessee, and several around in Alabama, and letters from all over. I didn't receive not one negative phone call, just one letter, and I think the fellow that wrote the letter I believe was up in Pennsylvania somewhere, misunderstood. He said, we're not in the horse and buggy days, and he was one that thought that I was against everything that Dr. Hamilton said. Now, I am against some of the things she said, but as far as the sex education, I am for that, but not the way she presented it.
The game was moved permanently to Crampton Bowl in 1924. That November day, 2,182 fans came to see it. It was the first time the Negro community had used the bowl. Dr. H. Council Trenholm, athletic director at Alabama State, and several others were instrumental in getting the game moved to Crampton Bowl. Tuskegee won that Crampton Bowl opener 28-7. Alabama State scored first on a 30-yard pass from Captain Millage Hall to Bob Johnson, but Tuskegee came back to score in the 3rd period to tie it on a run by Wooten. From there, the Golden Tigers' ground game was too much for the Hornets. It was 28-7 at the final whistle. Since that beginning in 1924, the game has evolved into a week-long celebration around Thanksgiving with parades, parties, dances, marching bands. One of the most spectacular events is the Thanksgiving morning parade down the streets of the state capitol. Let's enjoy some of the sights and sounds of that parade. Tuskegee Institute was founded by Booker T. Washington, one of the nation's great educators, on July 4th, 1881. He served as its principal and instructor for 33 years. George Washington Carver was associated with the Institute's School of Agriculture from 1896 through 1913. The George Washington Carver Museum preserves the laboratory and much of the work of Carver. And the George Washington Research Foundation carries on a variety of work sponsored by the federal government and by private industry. Tuskegee offers 46 degree-granting undergraduate programs and 27 graduate programs under the leadership of its president, Dr. Luther H. Foster. Alabama State University traces its origins to 1866 when Lincoln Normal School, a private institution for blacks, was established in Marion, Alabama. In 1887, the state legislature closed Lincoln Normal School and established a state normal school and university. Through the efforts of the black community providing funds and land, the normal school was brought to Montgomery. In its 104 years, Alabama State has consistently broadened its educational mission, gaining university status in 1969. In the last 17 years, under the leadership of Dr. Levi Watkins, Alabama State has experienced phenomenal growth. The student body now numbers nearly 5,000, with a faculty of 241, 40% of whom hold doctorates.
Almost in the heart of downtown Prattville lies 26 acres that many citizens hope will be preserved as a wilderness park. One of the plant species that has received the most attention throughout the state has been the giant oriental bamboo, introduced to this area approximately 40 years ago. The bamboo now stands 50 to 60 feet tall, and until recently had been vandalized by amateur furniture builders and lumberjack-minded boys.
Loretta, this would be a terrifically important project, even if there were no bamboo here. This is a typical southeastern hardwood, loblolly pine, almost climax forest in here. In fact, parts of it are just as a botanist would say, that is as far as the forest is going to go. There's second growth here, good examples of that. It's just an excellent example of everything we have here in the southeast. It's in a unique place, right here in the center of Prattville, Alabama. It's easy accessibility. And we even have here, right in the place, almost the second largest beech tree, American beech in the state of Alabama, is this large beech that you see right here behind me. And right behind it, of course, the Asian bamboo, the intrusive plant growth, which was introduced here sometime between 35 and 40 years ago, we believe. And with that in here, and you have other biomes in the area itself, we have a marshy area with all the aquatic plants and the animals with that, salamanders, fish, frogs, that sort of thing. We have a year-round stream through the area. I mean, year-round, you have a very pretty little stream right through the bamboo, you might say. That's an important biome also. So with the second growth, with the climax forest, with the bamboo intrusive, the marshland, some of the larger trees here, poplar, the tulip poplars here are tremendous trees. We may even have something there that should be measured, but they're very, very. It's an excellent example, and it's rare that you even find this good an example of the mixed hardwood and loblolly pine forests in such an area as this. We're right near an urban area. It's just disappearing today. This is a unique 26 acres, it really is. And Wilderness Park, that the group that wants to preserve this, that is to connote the fact that it can be used for recreation, for aesthetic purposes, you know, for rest, relaxation. And by keeping it as a wilderness, then it's a place that you can study also. It's a good place to study for students and for others to go and study, because it's going to stay as nature designed it and put it.
Bike paths and nature trails suitable for all people, including the handicapped, are often mentioned as possibilities connected with this virgin forest. These expensive dreams will never be a reality without the support of the city.
Well, the city has decided to make this our first priority for 1979. We're involved in other things this year, but we have made this first priority for 1979 in the Parks and Recreation Department, for which I'm responsible.
What about industrial growth in 20 years, say? Do you envision that you might need this land for some kind of industrial growth?
This will never be used for industrial growth because it's almost in the exact center of our city. It will nothing but residences would be in the area. And so it can always be used, in our opinion, for this purpose as a wilderness area. Actually, it's not too big an area, 26 acres, and we intend to stay behind it and get it done, because we could use this in years to come as a tourist attraction for our town. And we're very interested. All of the city council is behind it. The mayor and the council, all of us are behind it. And the ladies and the spinners can expect to have our full cooperation.
Retaining 26 acres of wilderness within the city limits might seem like staving off progress to some, but to the citizens of Prattville, it's preserving beauty for future generations. This is Loretta Bacon reporting for Alabama Illustrated.